what happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit. Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are the medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
Hello and welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It is me, your host, Robin Stebbins. And today I finally have Nick Camelo with me. Nick, can you introduce yourself and maybe tell some of our audience just a few things about you that you feel are important to your journey?
Oh, well, sure. First of all, thank you for having me on. And I appreciate anyone that, that really cares about us as a whole and wants to help in any way possible make this planet a better place. My name is Nicholas Camelo. I was born in the Adirondack region in central New York. I come from a Mohawk Italian background, which was a very different mix back in the 80s. I grew up in a suburban, very poor area mixed in with the suburban area of my other side of my family. Came up in a broken home. Parents were in and out together, but at an early age, I knew there was something that, was just kind about me, and I wanted to share it. I had great influences with a Native American uncle that took me under his wing, brought me and showed me how to respect the land. And really, at a young age, climbing trees and being up high was where I found, my greatest just personal thoughts, even as a boy, which I think we lose being in the bombardment of society and everything that's pushed in front of us. So I came to this state probably that you're finding me in now about 4 or 5 years ago, where I became good friends with a man named Santos Bonacci and started becoming more aware and involved in what is called the truth movement. But it's not just a truth movement. It is more of a soul catcher. You're basically, our souls are falling and we're finding ways to catch them rather than just let them go downstream or give them away. So that's where I find myself. And I stand with a very, very humble group of people who seek absolutely no recognition, such as people like yourself. But we honestly work from the heart so that we can better others. And that's where I stand.
Okay, that's absolutely the best introduction I've ever had, because part of what I want to talk about on this podcast is releasing labels. So a lot of times it's, I have a PhD in this and I wrote this book and on and on. It's not what defines us. What defines us is how we show up in the world and how we treat others and our mission, I believe, with our soul, with our heart intact. So in that, the soul catching, I believe that's why I'm here on the planet. I believe that is why I've been put here in this time, is to show people there's a question to be asked and a choice to be made. You don't have to sell your soul for $1. You don't have to sell your soul for a mystery injection. And if you do, that's okay. That's your choice. I say God is in the choice. So my first question, a simple one, how would you define God?
I would define God as the breath I just took. I think that God is everything and also nothing. For too long, we look for God outside of ourselves, and then they set up a great plot in order to, and when I say they, I only mean people in higher places, or like I like to say, people in hiding places. There's God is in, first of all, I want to represent the masculine and feminine when I say this. God is the woman is in the earth. The mother is the water. The father is the sun. It is a give and take energy. If you're looking for God, you can look within, but if you look without, you will only find many stories. And that's not a bad thing. It's all your ability to decipher what is and what isn't. A mature person has no argument at this table, for it is all growth. I myself, Jesus Christ was a huge narrative for me for a very long time. And when I came into that realization that that was actually the true hero, I knew where I was and where I would be going. So to define God is to define your steps. It's if you go to any religion and go into that place where, that is that place that you have. It's in every religion you have your figure, and that figure is strength. And I grew up Catholic, and I knew that my strength figure, Jesus Christ, who later, I would refer as Yeshua, and as I grew into my knowledge, I would center it into the heart. All my journeys, and if I grew up in any faith, this is where the stream would lead me. This is where the river would hit its bank. Your hero, your savior, your Muhammad, your Christ, your Krishna, your Buddha, your whatever you call it, it all flows to the same bank, and that is our breath. And to put God in a place, you have to see the mother in her awesomeness, and you have to see the father in his awesomeness. We too often try to put God into one place where God is everywhere. And even some good friends of mine spoke on where it's in the heart, and how magic our heart is, and how the last frontier of whatever was trying to take away what we're doing, because everything is currency. Even right now, my attention with you is my currency. This is the greatest gift that's worth more than anything on this planet. And my currency to you is giving this energy, and unless we can see God in all things, we would never be able to own what God truly is.
I love everything that you said about that, because that is, something that is difficult to define, because we're humans, and we're in this physical body, and I think we expect for this connection with God, this connection to be heaven on earth. Well, we create it in the moment, but we have to have the dichotomy. We have to have the yin and the yang. So in that, I think I can sum up the essence is a personal relationship between you and God, you and the divine, you and this energy source. And what I have seen as part of what's happening is we allow there to be a translator between us and God, between us and that information. So if we allow a translator, it can usurp the message. The message then can become one of enslavement or of darkness. And the question then is, how would you know whether you are embodying God and Christ consciousness, or whether you're serving the slave system, the darkness, the selling a piece of your soul for the almighty dollar, or for a almighty recognition? Like you said, there are a sect of us that don't need our name on it. We don't need our name in lights. We're doing it because it's in our soul to create this currency, this connection, So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I feel I have the answer. And it sounds kind of cocky to say it like that, but I gotta go. I gotta reference my good friend J.H.E. Russell. Um, you know, Jay told me, he said, Nick, don't be afraid to be a little cocky. He said, what you're holding on to is too precious to not come out there and smile about it a little bit. So I say that humbly, and and you know, the answer to what we are doing here is very simple, yet so out of reach. Um, the, the answer to life in itself, I feel, and I really feel this, and I've done this, and it's taken a long time to say this, is our compassion. Whether or not we have the ability to be kind to every form of life around us and be aware of what we're doing. And unless we can live like that, we're going to continue this cycle. And a few of us, and I don't say that to boast, and I don't say that like I'm proud or I'm wearing this cape of gold. I walk alongside with every human on this planet. I say that from the bottom of my heart, and even in the heels and the hells of my gut, I tell you that it is a duality. It is a mere existence. We are here to see ourselves in our most disgusting image, yet we are here to open our wings and become light from the depths of tragedy, despair, sickness, you name it. It's a refining of the sword.
I see that. I've seen that from the beginning in my journey, was that compassion shows up for me as, do you speak to me like you speak to God? Do I speak to you like I speak to God? That's easy. But do I speak to those who I feel triggered by? Do I speak to those attacking me like I speak to God? The
Yeah.
awareness around that.
Excuse me, I just had to add to what you said. Yes. Unfortunately, for some people, this will be uncomfortable, but I believe we do. We do. You have to reach out to those that you are at total odds with. You have to.
Agree.
And some of my
that
friends
is
will
why we're
disagree
here,
with me.
right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, that is the pain of the mission.
that is the pain of it, and that is the understanding that if you were to create heaven the way they've sold us what heaven is, it would cease to be heaven very quickly, because then you are nothing but the one side of the coin that doesn't exist. So you would have no contrast. And I think when we say, do you speak to me like you speak to God? In that, are we able to connect with those that trigger the parts of ourselves that need to be healed, that need to evolve in a higher consciousness, a higher form within God? So it's not really a question, but if we are these cells of God, this soul's signature, each unique but yet all one, and if love is threatened, if compassion is threatened, if against all odds you still choose light, you still choose love, you still choose God, I think that is what we're being faced with. These challenges of, at the end, if you have sacrificed and you have stood in that dichotomy, and you still, in the face of all adversity, choose light, choose love, that is then a deeper level of understanding of your connection to God, connection to source, connection to whatever you choose to define that as. So how do you keep within your human state and not get cocky or not get sidelined by earthly pleasures, the status of having your name in lights, or people know your name, or wealth, or fill in the blank with whatever you want?
Well, I think the way you keep an alignment is to is to look at anything around you. If it doesn't have a beating heart, then it really doesn't matter. The material, or if it isn't alive, I should say. There's, plants wouldn't have a beating heart, but they have a system, right? But I feel that life around you is what matters, and the material realm is the hiccup. It's where we look at our possessions and we fornicate and we lose ourselves in our lust and temptation. That's the battle. That's the true battle. But it's not a battle to be unforgiven. It's a battle to learn. If you haven't learned, unfortunately, I just feel as if we do it again. I can't speak for people who have so on quote unquote sold their soul, because I would even try to save them if I could. But I guess the real kicker, even for me, to talk about myself as a third party, is I believe that I can, and I love myself for that, because I'll tell you something. I didn't just choose this. This chose me. That's a cliche. It's easy to say for some, but what does it really mean? Well, for me, in 1998, I yelled at God and I yelled at the devil, or whatever you would call either or. And I slammed my hands together and I said, why can't it just... And right at that moment, I closed my eyes in tears, missing my brother who was in an adolescent juvenile home. I uttered 4 numbers out of my mouth, and they were 1, 2, 2, 1. And as an 18-year-old teenage young boy, I've gone through puberty and having zits and crazy LA looks gel hair and wanting to ride whatever wave was going and whatever songs were on, no matter what the words were about. I was lost, but to see these numbers in the middle of all that, and then to start to understand them afterwards, I knew that, wow, I said that out of a blank thought. So I know that the higher conscious, or at least I was aware that there was some kind of higher conscious in me that had nothing to do with a book or anything that any kind of school had taught me. I was amazed by my own self. And then I could put it together. I walked on the streets, even this was in 1998. I would tell people this story over and over again. And I tell it in such excitement. And I can tell you how the patterns continued, because you have 12 months in a year, 12 inches in a foot, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 disciples. You have, 12 systems in the skeletal system. Whatever the creator is doing, he loves 12. She loves 12. Whatever you want to call it. And then you have 13, which would be the divine space in the middle. That would be the 13. That's where 13 comes in. But in this world, we will take the number 13 and we will turn it right upside down. And we'll talk about the Knights Templars and Friday the 13th and people hanging on the stake and Jason Voorhees and I love horror movies and we'll take the divine number and we'll turn it around and make it into a sick, lustful, just what it's not. But that's what this world does. It takes beauty and it inverts it. But nevertheless, I can see 12 and 21, and it spoke to me. Then, in the early 2000s, along to the mid-2000s, humanity went through a mind F. All right? I'll be polite. And that mind F was the Mayan calendar. And then, behold, their calendar ended on those numbers. And I didn't know that as an 18-year-old boy. I knew nothing about the Mayans at that time.
Right.
But I did know 1221. And I did know the duality of it. And if you want to start, look at the patterns. Look at the patterns. And where I can go after that is amazing. And the story doesn't stop there. I've only scratched the surface with you and telling you. But to honor what those numbers do and where they will bring you, I must say, I have never in my life thought or felt such a presence of either good or evil than when I was able to own what the number 12 means to us as a people.
That brings up a really good point for me. And in hearing that is, for those listening, when you have a translator between you and God, and I can call that religion, I can call that the spiritual communities that have you adopt a set of beliefs that are their beliefs. How do you know with what you're hearing is the true voice of God versus what you're talking about with the number 13, something that's been usurped, meant for your control or programming or domestication, meant to keep you in a form of sick, weak, dependent slavery? So how would you let our listeners know a good way to start determining what is the truth? Those that have been so, like you said, there are those on this planet, I believe every single person is worth saving and is worth the effort and worth the connection. But for those that are just starting to wake up and they can't tell the difference between what they're watching on the news and these horror films and what's okay and what isn't okay, where do they start?
Well, they start with, first of all, it's easier to attack the young and the old. For example, I love my grandmother. I love her, and I'm going to reference her now, with all respect. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my grandmother yesterday, and at night, her and my aunt, they watch a movie, and she immediately began to tell me the story of what the movie they were watching was about. And before she even began to speak, I knew it had to be some kind of suspense and somebody getting hurt. And I was right. Some boy was putting his whole family into a hole where they were stuck. And I think at the end of the movie, she told me he pulled them out. Well, nevertheless, start to finish, it's obvious what's going on. When she first began to tell me, her eyes lit up. But as she finished telling me, it's almost like she realized what she was telling me, I already knew I wasn't approving of. And that in itself told me everything. Those split moments. Like, you've been programmed to like these movies and think that we need to talk about and reiterate them as if they're gold, as if you had a good time that night, got your popcorn out. But truly, we are honoring drama, stress, tragedy, horror, blood, inappropriate sexual visualization. And we're putting all these things and balling them up and putting a bow on them. Same way we rape and abuse and murder animals, and then we put it inside of a nice vegetable and pretty looking bun and call it a nice something to eat. It's no different. We are taking horror and we are making it look pretty. I don't know. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry. I may have went off a little bit.
No, I
think that's important.
But what it does is it brings up to me the most important piece is that when somebody is glazed, their eyes glaze over and they try to convince you of why this is a fun or a good movie. And, same with my son. He's 15. He wants to go see these horror movies. And the question I ask him is, at one point, your eyes will have closed for the last time. For between the time that you open them and the time you close them, what do you want them to have seen? If you went across a pasture and you saw cows in the middle of the field watching for entertainment, their fellow cows and steers and bulls get slaughtered, what would you think of them? He said he'd think they would have gone insane. And I said, how is that different than what we are glorifying on this screen? We're watching humans get mutilated or animals, and it's supposed to be fun. We're fed this train of information that we're not supposed to question, critically think, or creatively think, or question any of it when it's at that level. And if we do question it, there's a study or a peer-reviewed journal article from New England Journal of Medicine, or pick your favorite, Harvard. And so then we've now allowed another translator. They're saying it's safe, it's positive, it's healthy. And then the question goes back to, in your heart, the heart that is made in the image of God, in your soul, whether it's positive or negative, without having to have the translator tell you it's okay. Does that make sense?
You don't need no translator. You don't need no book. And before I lose it, it's on the tip of my tongue to answer your question directly. You asked me how do you know? How can you be sure that it's the holy versus the unholy? And this is how you know. You know because your heart will tell you. But you only can trust yourself if you are consciously with yourself. Too many of us drift away from who we truly are, and we cannot even trust ourselves. Now, I know that if I wake up today and that I pay attention to decency and that I speak decency and that I actually care that what's going in my body and in my mind and out my mouth, that I will produce a better version of Nick. And every day I want to, and I struggle because I'm not perfect. That's what we do. We are in a wave up and down. And even in my own life, I take my experience and I bring them to the table. I do it with my partner. I do it with my son. I do it with my animals. I do it with my family. I have been known to rub people in uncomfortable ways. And it hurts, and it's ugly, and it's messy, but it means you care. And I have Christian friends, Muslim friends. I've got them all around the board. And I can look at them and sit at the same table and say, I love you and you love me too. And that's why it's so hard to look away from me, isn't it? There are friends in every denomination that I have, because I grew up in a melting pot, that I can really relate to and that I can break bread with, put my arms around and look straight in the eye, and they know this is Nick. He wants to tell the truth. He's going to make people uncomfortable because he's going to shed skin that we don't want to shed. And that's what I do. And that's why I trust my own self so much. And, I've been told certain things that are honorable and not, and I don't take compliments very well because it makes me feel tacky about what I feel I'm here to do. But at the same time, when, guys like Santos Bonacci are telling me that the heavens choose, and I'm messing each other at times like 10:44, or like my good friend Rob and Sal, I shared a public post today showing how many common friends we had. We had 144 common friends. See, in syncretism and syncrosities, you're able to see patterns, and those patterns tell a large story. For example, when I got married, at the time I was 31, and I was listening to a lot of Notorious B.I.G. I was driving an Acura. I met my wife down in Brooklyn, New York. I'm driving an Acura in Brooklyn. I'm paying attention to the World Trade Center. Just comes to show. Then I find out she works like a block away from the World Trade Center. As time would go on, I would find my own battles in my marriage until it came to an end a few years ago now. But I'm not mad or sad. I look at it like a lesson. And, okay, gonna drive an Acura, bump some Biggie Smalls, go down to Brooklyn, live that life. Then fast forward, I'm raising my son a few years ago. I'm just a single dad, got my son a lot, and we're watching a lot of, Rocky. And where's Rocky? Rocky's based in Philadelphia. And then, well, how could this possibly add into my life now? Well, I go down and I start dating a girl that lives in South Florida, and she just happens to be from Philadelphia. And she lives in South Florida, 2 blocks from where my father chose to live in South Florida. Out of the whole state of Florida, she just happens to be 2 blocks from where my father lived, because he had passed away now. So it's very, touchy-feely, in my heart. But I just happened to date a woman in Philadelphia when I'm basically letting my son watch the Rocky movies for some masculinity and some encouragement and some brotherhood, and to show him the combination of, because I'm very careful, I'm very clever. I know the relationship in those movies where Rocky has his friend Apollo, who he ends up fighting but then becoming friends with, and my son can see that.
It sounds like, oh, sorry.
And I say this is important. I say this because this is the healing that especially is needed in this country. I knew that my son would see such a relationship between an Italian man and a black man, and he would know that racism, no such thing.
That's it. And again, all of this points back to, how do you know? How do you know BLM, ALM, transgender, transhuman, the critical race theory? Now they call it something different. All of these things are linked. They're linked because they're selling us a story, and they're selling us a hill to die on, a label to defend, a pronoun to get offended if, oh, Nick, sorry, you didn't use my pronouns. We're getting more and more into celebrating depravity. We're getting to the point where 1984, George Orwell, is coming to absolute fruition. What's good is bad, what's up is down. And so in that, how I think the message is so important when we're seeing and talking to people that are so lost. Speaking to people that speak the same language and are cheerleaders, that's not going to help me grow and evolve. But when we get into the people that are scared and they're following the narrative to their own demise and to their own children's demise, and they use
Hollywood movies. They use Hollywood movies to.
Oh yes.
To really, but what I did is I used it for the good.
Yes.
See, I would find what I can take versus what was negative.
That's an important point to just hammer right now, is that we're not saying this isn't a list of do's and don'ts. It is tap into your heart. What feels right to your soul. If you're not, like you mentioned earlier, if you're not in a relationship with yourself that is of God, you have to release the things that are holding you down, whether it's addiction or trauma or anger, unrepressed anger.
Yeah, anger, it becomes disease. When we hold on to stress, it becomes disease. I've been in a lot of confrontations and borderline arguments because I had to release. I had no choice, because if I harbor it and it becomes an illness in me, I can literally feel it within 20 minutes. And
yes.
I have to lay down. But before I move away from that movie, when I was talking about Rocky, I'd like to let people in on what is obvious if you just try. I want people to look, and I'm sure a lot of guys my age, they've seen those movies, so this could hit home. And I'm looking for a male audience right now between 30 and 60. Listen, Rocky, Apollo. I want you to really listen to what these movies are doing to you mentally. Ra's the son. Rocky runs up the steps, and if you look to his right, the sun. I'm not sure if I feel it. I feel that the sun is setting. I could be wrong. My girlfriend would know. She's from Philadelphia, but I feel that it's setting. Someone can either or, but it has to do with the sun, and it all ties back to the sun. Our from our seasons to our rebirth to our true new year, which is the spring now. It's all honoring the sun. And even in that movie, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe they're not allowed to speak on it. It's kind of like a covenant. But when these things are done, you don't hear these actors come out and talk, well, this is why this name is this name, or who actually made these decisions, or why when I was a child and I was watching Thundercats and the Sword of Omens had an eye in the middle. Would that have to do with your divine eye would that come into play? But I think it's important for people to see these patterns, and especially men, because I can really own and speak to them, because I know as a man, these things help. Some things want to shape you, but once you get a hold of your own conscious, you're not shaped by these things. You literally use them as tools. There is no shaping you, because once you have a hold of your conscious, you just let this thing play out around you, and you try to fill in potholes wherever you can. We're not here to do anything but serve. We are here to serve. That's our greatest purpose.
That and you can't serve though unless you're clean. You're clean with yourself.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can, but you can still serve, but it's not as potent. It doesn't have the same magic as if you care about yourself. When you start with yourself, and this is what Christianity is doing that's wrong, and they're standing in the middle of a huge mistake right now, and it's coming from a man that has bled Yeshua out of his heart in his life. Listen to me, my fellow Christians. I talk to you from my heart. I love you. I'm telling you right now where this is the hugest trick right now. Whatever is negative has taken Christianity and told them that stretching was evil, has told them that, and it's even in the Bible, it literally has taken good Christian people, because they're good people. They have great hearts. It's taken them and it's told them that evil people are going to come and say that they love themselves and that they found God in themselves. You see that? Mm-hmm. That is the biggest gap and misunderstanding and untrue. It couldn't be more untrue. And I see them come out in it, and my heart bleeds as a pure truther and as a man with a heart that is connected to source. I tell you that this is the trick. This is the deception. It is turning love upside down. It is making you think that yoga is demonic. It is making you think that walking barefoot is weird. It is making you think that looking at the sun and being out in it with no sunscreen on is dangerous. It is that same energy. And I say it with such passion because it is dangerous and it is dividing, and it's their greatest tool. Their greatest tools. They use tantras, they use hand symbols. And you see me here? There is no hand symbol but love. I don't care. I'm not into it. The other guys, they want to go and there's no show. I don't have a show. There's no show in me. I don't care any. When I was younger, you always think that being a singer or actor is such an honorable thing to be, right? Now at this day, I wouldn't even want to. I don't even want none of that mess, right? You couldn't even. Pepsi can, and quote me on this. Pepsi can come to my door and offer me $10 million to put a can in my hand and go on TV. And I'm telling you right now, I would say no. And I need the money. But I'm telling you right now, if you're standing in the light of truth and in your heart, the amounts of money like that, you cannot be bought. There is nothing someone can do to promote poison and use my life to do it.
And I want to put an exclamation point on that, because that is what will usher in the light. Darkness is the absence of the light. Whatever is happening on this planet, I think, is part of the plan, the opening, the awakening for the light to be ushered in. But what they don't understand is there are people like you, there are people like me that do not have a price. I recently had a job in San Francisco for working for this wealthy multimillionaire, and I got him off of drugs. I helped his nutrition. He was eating a vegetarian, vegan diet, and was just doing wonderfully. And then he decided he wanted to scrap it all and go back on drugs. And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave." And he said, "Just name your price. Everyone has one." And I said, and I needed money as well, as we do. But I said, "I don't have a price. This is not in alignment with my values, with my mission, with my legacy." And I left. They do not understand the people on this planet. And there's not a lot of us, but there are some that don't have a price. That no matter what amount of money you put in front of us, if it's not in alignment with my values, I will not do it. And I think that is how we've gotten to this lie in the first place. Darwin's theory of evolution. Survival of the fittest. Dog eat dog. If you don't get yours, somebody else will. Then, so you're in a state of fear. The fear leads to doing things that you normally wouldn't. And so that is, I believe, the essence of your connection with God, is that you can walk through this untroubled. It is sometimes dramatic. It is sometimes can create fear, but you can walk through it untroubled because you're in faith. You're in alignment with your values. Everything that you're doing is for the greater good. As deeply as you know in the moment, and as you continue on and the momentum of learning about yourself continues, then you know different ways of navigating that and doing better. So
that's a great, yeah. Unless you know how to, unless you have the proper way to navigate, then you're basically walking in circles. And isn't that funny? If we are in one big basin of a circle, wouldn't somebody want us to stay in this circle? Well, you can travel around the world, right? No, you're traveling in a big circle is what you're doing. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I kind of want to circle that back to the sun and our relationship to the sun, and our relationship to the moon, and what we've been taught about this blue planet of ours. What do you want to speak about that, and kind of the hero's journey and Rocky, and kind of tie that together?
Yeah, well, the earth is us. We are the earth. Our bodies, we are a body of water. When you put our body inside, and I spoke to you the other day about this privately. When you put your body in, that's why baths feel so wonderful, because you're putting a body of water inside of a body of water. Now, when you look at the earth, and Pierre Luigi Lina, don't quote me on the way I said that name, but I will give you a link to put up. The Italian scientist who did an experiment proving that there was no motion to the earth. Now, it's just like it's just like any. You don't hear about him much, but he is a renowned scientist who has now passed away. It's almost like anybody that's being, censored in any way. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones I want to listen to. Exactly. And it's the same with what you see on television, what you see, just people that are in high places that are basically really bought out. They have to say certain things. But if you use your mind and you use your heart and your own logic, it becomes pretty obvious that you live in a emotionless realm. That what is happening is once you buy the Disney script of living on a big ball, then you narrow yourself into this little tiny space, and you make this infinite stuff around you, and then your mind just totally loses itself because you're basically pouring all your focus and concentration as a light being into this place that doesn't even exist, these areas that don't even exist, and these wonders and these possibilities that really don't exist. So the divinity of who you are as a human dissipates, and then you lose your value. And once you lose your value, you become weak. And once you become weak, you become easier to control. And once you become easier to control, you become afraid, and then it's lights out. So it's a slow mental death. And then you if you can come to the realization, I was an 8-year-old boy, 1988, and my mother, she came from a 6-pack, 3 boys, 3 girls, and one of those children, went to college, and he was the youngest. He was my Uncle Martin, and he said to me, way back then, okay, he told me, he said, Nicholas, the earth does not move. And I laughed because I had to go to school, and that's the first thing you see. And I look at, how can the one child that went to school and graduates college and all the others don't even have this come back to me and tell me the earth doesn't move? So then some years took place, and in my own journey as I grew, I really began to really absorb the truth about that in, I would say, my earth. I was hinting at it in my late 20s into my 30s, but then in my mid 30s, it was gloves were off. I knew in my heart that just search yourself. I really, it's a touchy thing to talk about because I do care about my audience. And the reason I say I care about my audience, I'm not afraid to talk, but this is what I say. Just know that I come from nowhere but my heart when I talk about this stuff. So if you think that I got some kind of gain or some kind of popularity or I want somebody to notice me because I'm on a bandwagon that's popular New Age, you're just part of the mind F. You don't have to be that place. Now sit down with me, look in my eyes because I care. I won't run from you, but you'll run from me, and then you know what I'm talking about when I talk to you. I will stay here with you. I will not falter. I will not fade. You know when somebody's telling you the truth and they care because they don't go anywhere. They will never go anywhere. Yep. And that is the God in you. That is the higher conscious. It's the higher mind in you. And once you start to own it, then you can see, these streams are my mother, this earth, wow. That's why I'm so connected. That's why I feel so good when I'm out in nature. That's why I feel so good when I take that breath. Oh my God, that breath. Oh my God, that's the greatest drug you can use is air. You know why? Because air is your air, is your heart, is your awareness. It all makes sense. The dots never fail to connect after you see them. So you are in a realm. You are on a stationary place. There are hills and valleys, and there are depths. And I'm sorry, the satellite. When Google satellites and the maps first came out, I think I was like in my early 20s and late 90s, whatever. I was really being able to zoom in all around, and I said, "Whoa!" People say, "Whoa, Nick, what are you talking about? What do you see?" I just see a bunch of hills, valleys, mountains. I said, "No, these are calcified beings. You can't see that there were once huge beings on this planet that have turned into stone. And there were once huge trees on this planet that are called mountains now. You can't see this? No, what are you talking about, Nick? What are you talking about?" Okay. The truth is so brutal sometimes because it'll slap you in the face and shut you up and make you go home and tuck your legs together because you got nobody to tell because everybody will think you're crazy. Oh, it's brutal. It's brutal. But I've seen it. I've seen it back then.
Yeah. And it's difficult for those of us that see it the indoctrination of the rest of the population is meant to shame you, judge you, ostracize you from your community, which is so threatening. And that's why a lot of us shut down, didn't talk about it. When I was a tiny little girl, I don't even remember, it was one of my earliest memories, I knew the earth was flat. We are motionless, watching the motion above us. That's what I mean by intuition. And later on, as I've been indoctrinated and going back to sleep or trying to, I realized, I said to myself, well, maybe my intuition was wrong. It's never been wrong. I've never been wrong about those things, that those intuitive hits that I get that you just know. You can't explain how you know, but you just know. Why is it important, though, whether we have a geocentric model of understanding the universe and a heliocentric? Why does it matter if we're motionless or not? Why would they lie to us? Is it just to get money for NASA, Nazi, or is it for a bigger control? Why does it matter whether we know or not?
Bigger. Yeah, NASA's just a backdrop. It's much bigger. It's much bigger. I can dig right down into what you think you are or why you are. And once I do that, I've pulled you up by the roots. That is the biggest thing. Conscious currency is the greatest wealth. It's greater than gold. It's greater than diamonds. It's greater than mansions, popularity, fame. It is your conscious. So if I'm this bad guy with a lot of money and low self-esteem, I'm going to want to rip your consciousness out, literally. And I'm going to kick all my way around it because I can't stand the fact that I don't own it. Because I own everything else. Why? I have to own your mind. That's the only thing I don't own. So, that really tells you why it is all about. That's why TikTok is popular, right? It grabs your consciousness. But then you have to ask yourself, here you have 2 TikTok videos, 2 of them. One is conscious awakening, truth. The other is pure garbage. And we'll just keep you running in circles. Which one do you choose? There's Morpheus with the blue pill, red pill, right? Anything in this world we can use for good or bad. I got a cool car, right? But I don't care. Maybe 20 years ago I would have said, hey, look at me. Now I'm clever. I'm going to take that cool car, and whoever's going to say, hey, that's a cool car, I'm going to drop them a little card of truth. You can turn people. I hope you hear me when I say this. Stop adoring your possessions and turn them into lessons for less fortunate people. Because you don't own anything. You don't own anything. Okay? So now, if you can reach that state of life, then you're in a great place. You're in a great place because we are weighed down heavily by the possessions around us. Heavily. Even those pictures behind you, that dresser, anything you own, you think about, you move around, you store. In one way or another, you're paying for it. It is an anchor, or it's an asset. Our job in life is to get rid of as much as we can and hold on to a few things that we really need. And if we have a purpose, then then having a little extra is okay as long as we're using it for decent things. So, but that's a big one because it's all a fight for your mind, everything. Now, I'm not fighting for your mind. I'm just trying to awaken it. And like you, I see happiness in watching somebody take their own first steps.
That's it. I find that's the truest sense of joy. I have said this before on this podcast. It's like watching a sunrise. It's beautiful. It leaves me awestruck. I didn't have anything to do with it except for that I am present and I'm witnessing. I'm a sacred witness to this. So the sunrise and myself are having an interaction. The same with another person that I am witnessing their awakening, taking their first steps. And it's back to that sacred dance. So I think, Nick, if I'm a hammer, fire hosing him with information, giving him all this, like, here's the truth, and why can't you see it? I've lost them. I've done more harm than good. But if
Yeah.
I return to where you are, and we look at what is the delivery? Do I need 15 books and a bunch of teachers to show me how to do it, or I can put my hand on my heart and use the compassion of God, the compassion of Christ consciousness of Jesus? Then the message is heard. If I'm speaking from my brain, it's a different intonation, it's a different vocal resonance than when I'm speaking from my heart. And I have nerves that are innervating my vocal cords from my heart, so I can speak from my heart. And when I do that, when I'm tapped into that resonance, I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just speaking the truth to those that have the ability and are open enough to hearing it. But I tell you, when I speak from the heart, I've never had anyone that didn't stop what they were doing, almost like drop their pen, and they're tapped in, because we are the voice of God.
Watch this. A couple of years ago, I went with my a couple Muslim brothers right over here, and I pulled my car over, and I had a red light, and I said, "Hey, what if I told you the Catholic Church created Islam?" And that's a touchy thing to say when you're rolling through the hood. So I pulled my car over and I got out. Just so happens one of the brothers was a good friend of mine from school a while ago. And then I was invited into the congregation. And one of the most hardened criminal men, thugged out, wouldn't talk to nobody, wouldn't open up. All of a sudden, here's me talking about syncretism from the other room with a broom in his hand. And he drops the broom after listening to me speak for 20 minutes. And he opens up like a lifetime of whatever behind the mask. And I just sat back. And those men, adult men, stayed an extra 2 hours. And I just still love them to this day. I think about them. And of course, in my heart, I'm a little boastful because I know I sparked that. But at the same time, it's a divine power that I hold in my hand. But I'm humble that I hold it, and I want to keep it. But it's not worth anything unless I share it. And I am nothing unless I include every single. Because everybody is me, and I am everybody. When I look at you, I'm looking at another version of me. And that's why people find each other. And when they come together for greater causes, it's strong. I often tell this to my girlfriend. If our alignments are together like this, we are powerful. We are so strong because you've taken masculinity and feminine, and then you put them together and you create like a kingdom. And that's power. That's power. When your frequencies are aligned and your hearts are aligned, I'm still taken back by what man and woman can do when they work together.
Agree. And that's, but
we're so wrong. We're so wrong. We need to work together.
We have to work together. It's I don't know if you're familiar with the Wayfinders. It's the Hawaiian tribes, and the Wayfinder was the woman, and she would tell the canoe where to go, and they kept her in a sacred balance, because without her, she wouldn't be able to direct the ship. Without the men, you wouldn't be able to go forward. It has to be this synergistic combination of men and woman in the sacred balance. But it's not what we've been lied to, this fairy tale nonsense that women are told. Knight in shining armor comes in and rescues you, and you don't have to do anything. Or then we're lost again. We're lost in this noise of controlled opposition. We're lost in this noise of how we're supposed to operate as a man and a woman.
Yeah. I often tell people that The man is the center bark of the tree, and he's the strength in the middle. And the woman, she is the branches and the beauty that blossoms in the spring. But the woman goes through hell, right? She goes through the cold. Her leaves fall. She goes through a lot, you know. And as the man, we have to keep that strength in the middle. And then with the love of the water and the sun, she's able to come back out again, which is miraculous in itself.
It's all miraculous, and the combination of this, the synergistic relationship between us and Mother Earth. We are nature. We are the planet. We are whatever you want to call it. We are all of this, because where my wave particles begin and end is not defined. It goes on likely infinitely, and it connects and it interacts with everything else in my biosphere. And so in that sacred dance, that sacred witnessing, consider the motivation of what Nick's saying, of what I'm saying. I don't make any money on this podcast. I actually pay a lot of money to put these podcasts out there, because I want you to start to question. I want everyone to start to question, what is their truth? Are you really fulfilled by what you're doing? Is it really in alignment with what you believe? And we never have to compromise that. And I hear that a lot. Like, well, I had to get this injection because I needed to keep my job. Well, I had to fill in the blank. It's always something that compromises a piece of their soul. So in closing, Nick, I like to end with solutions. What are some simple things somebody could do right now if they're feeling afraid and they're feeling lost, to tap into their God molecules, to hear the God within them, to see God?
Okay. I know I say this from everything that I ever was or anything I'll ever be. If you want to be with the Creator, if you want to be with the Creator, if you really want this in your life, you start with yourself. Look at my hand. When I go like this, right, if you just seen it, it would look like one hand. But when I do this, it looks like two, right? You can obviously see that. God is the one. One can divide into how many numbers? All of them. Two can divide into how many numbers? Only half. It'll never be able to divide into all of them. So that's where this story of a jealous, evil entity, I want to be like one, that's where that comes from. So you need to get that kind of thinking out of your head. And I can't believe I just said that, because I usually teach that. And now I'm just for the first time saying, get that out of your head. Because it's good for understanding, but now comes the work within. And where you really start, right, barefoot, you start with plant-based nutrition, you start with sun gazing, you start with where your attention is, where your what you're, everything that's coming in, everything that's going out. But once you start cleaning out, enemas, aged urine, enemas, coffee enemas, drinking clean water, that's high in minerals, that's actually untouched. These are the purities that begin to create a vibratory field in our vessel, where I'm not only talking to you right now, I am excited. I am thrilled. I am happy. Why? Because every word I'm owning. Not a book, not a movie, nothing is influencing me, not a person. These are all my own conversations with the divine coming out. It's almost like I'm saying, hey, I'm going to go release my voice. I love you. Thank you for your encouragement. I've always heard you my whole life. You're my higher conscious. And I'm excited because not only do I feel that I'm talking with you and the audience right now, but I feel like the divine actually has a channel through me, and that makes me feel honored. I am humbled, and I would carry that torch for as long as anything I've ever been. So, but that's where I would tell people to start. You start in your heart, right? You start in your heart. And all those things I just said matter. Baths, they matter, right? We've heard bentonite clay, borax, baking soda, apple cider vinegar in your bath water. Tying onions to your feet at night, whatever you can do to pull your toxins out. There's so many ways. But I feel like once you are on this road, all these roads seem like this, but they all end up on one path. They all are here at first for you. You're scared, but then you will end up on one path. And then you're looking at, I'm 42, but I'm very childlike. And I say that in a fun way. There's so much fun in me. There's so much. You see the excitement in my face, even at my age, it doesn't go nowhere. It's been there since I was, since I could remember, all the way back to 2 years old, and that's what you want. That's where you want to start. I tell people, stay there. Don't lose that.
And how do you know? Because that's your emotions are your guide. Are you sluggish? Are you slow? Are you depressed? Do you have your head down? Do you feel like you need a nap every afternoon? Are you turned on? Like you can't wait to share all of this love and compassion with your neighbors, with the ones that trigger you, the ones that you are triggering. How can you bridge that gap? How can you come together in this beautiful conversation with literally anyone? So, it's interesting to me too, Nick, all of the things that you mentioned are all of the substances that I came to naturally, and I grew up in the wild, in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, and I spoke to the trees and I spoke to the plants and the mountains told me bedtime stories. I was a wild human and I will never forget what that is like. And so until I get back to that raw essence of who I am, I'm not done. And I'll never be done.
Listen to what you just said. Listen to what you just said. You said, till I get back to that raw essence. Raw essence.
Raw essence.
I hear it.
That's
the Army. And that's what they do when they put soldiers, which soul dyers, right? That's what they do. They have them sing about Ra, right?
Yes.
That's the inversion. There's the inversion right there.
Yes.
Hoorah. You'll never know who Ra is if you're fighting for a greedy entity.
And you would never fight for a greedy entity if you were in your essence. So it's not, it seems complicated when you first start on this trajectory, and to wake up to what really is truth can be overwhelming. And a lot of people say, forget it. I'm not doing it. But it is actually a lot more simple than you realize, because it goes back to this and what you're talking about, Nick. All of these different capillaries, whatever you start with will lead you to the heart. If you start cutting out toxins out of your diet and you stop eating anything with processed anything, any list of ingredients, any sugars, you start drinking pure water that's been untouched, that's in the stream, that has the noises of the forest and the vortexes that spin in stagnant water. Everything is for a purpose. You don't interfere with Mother Nature, and we are Mother Nature. You don't interfere with your body. Then you start to align with that true.
What you just said. What you just said. Interfere. Interfere. See?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
See? They're tied together. When you interfere, you interfere.
That's what I could go on, but that is how they usurped our language. So we have to get back to the raw essence of who we are with our own language of evolution, of enlightenment, all of these things like that you're talking about, the devolution of our society, the hoorahs, the soldiers, the soul dyers. That is important to understand. Who are we fighting for? What is their motivation? Greed and money and control and power. And I think they didn't stop with, I want to control your mind. They want to control our soul. They want to control the essence of our connection to God, our soul. They want our soul. They want to become our gods. So that is why I think it's so imperative that we truly see who we are in our essence, in our power. When our pineal gland is online and Everything is functioning so that we can now see. I see. I can now understand, and I can be in that presence.
I want to issue a heavy warning before we end, and I think it's very important. And my warning is this: there are many people out there that are going to say exactly what we're saying right now and disguise themselves as us in order to cause more division.
Yes.
They will do it. And I want people to be heavily aware of that because it's there and I will never be tainted by it. And I will always call it out. I see you. I know you're out there. I see you. It's like the troll, right? But it will disguise themselves as you. So,
100%. And be aware then what your body's reaction to those trolls are. And I know everyone will always admit they had that gut reaction. They had that reaction. And then this programming comes in. Well, maybe I'm being racist. Maybe I'm being negative. Maybe I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt. I judged a book by its cover. No. Trust your gut. Trust your heart. Trust the motivation behind the words. Why are we showing up here today? Why are you taking this hour out of your beautiful Sunday when you have all of these other things capturing your attention? Why would we be here showing up? Because we believe that there is hope. We believe that there is a better way through this. And with that, do you have any last words that we can leave with the audience that can give them this beautiful motivation and fire under your eyes that I see?
Sure. I'd like to do this. I won a contest in 5th grade for poetry. So I think that I have the right to do this. I'm going to freestyle a poem right now without any rehearsal or any thought. And I hope that it sounds all right. So here we go. Dear planet Earth, I love you. I'm here. I've always been there. I'm here to encourage you to have no fear. I want you to know that I care. I'm just like you. I am exactly like you. I've fallen, I've gotten up. I've straight up fucked up. I've done things that I'm not proud of, but yet I've learned from them. I've made my greatest asset my pen. And I'm here just like the sun will rise again. You are my greatest friend. I find peace in you. I watch you in all you do. I never get mad. Sometimes I'm sad, but that makes me feel like I'm real. In my journey, I've learned some things. And in that place, to you I bring anything that my heart can sing.
That's it. That's beautiful, Nick. And to go out on a limb like that and say a poem, a freestyle poem, that's courage. And if what would this world be if we all showed up with that level of courage? It's sharing this piece of our soul with one another. And that's the world I want to live in, with everyone's awoken to their power, their truth, their brilliance, their soul's song, their soul's poem. Thank you so much, Nick Camelo. You are an inspiration, and I love your message. I appreciate that you are out there singing your song.
And I appreciate you. So I appreciate you also, Robin. I see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick.